and directed by Wes Anderson, Isle of Dogs is a stop-motion comedy film that takes place in the city of Nagasaki. In a distant future Nagasaki, there's been an outbreak of dog flu, which leads the mayor to issue a decree that exiles all dogs to a nearby island called Trash Island. But one day, a young boy named Atari arrives on the island looking for his lost dog Spots, and a pack of dogs attempt to help him locate him. As the dogs attempt to find Spots with Atari, they also try to understand the dog flu and how to solve their problems so they can return to the homeland. Okay, so Isle of Dogs was definitely a film that I was highly anticipating. I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson's work overall, and I thought this one just looked like it was going to be just as much fun as his other films, if not more so. I also thought this one probably looked even more creative, and that's saying something for Wes Anderson, than all of his previous other films that he's done so far that I all really enjoyed. And this is probably honestly the best cast he's ever had. There's a lot of good actors that we'll get to in a little bit, but needless to say, you can tell I was obviously pretty excited for this movie. And luckily it didn't disappoint me. I think we're looking at one of the best movies of the year thus far, and probably when it's all said and done, one of the best movies of 2018, because it's fun, it's funny, it's heartwarming, and it's creative enough to satisfy anyone just looking for a good time. Wes Anderson's work is easily recognizable because it's just so unique, and Isle of Dogs falls right in line with that signature style that he's always had. And almost always, it seems that the Wes Anderson formula ends up resulting in an experience that's just a good time overall. And that's what Isle of Dogs is too. It's a good time because everything feels so silly and so ridiculous. Somehow it works with his films because all the surrounding parts connect with each other and aid in the establishment of a consistent tone so effectively. You know that the movie is silly, but you can embrace it because it's very consistent, like I mentioned, it's well executed, and it's just fun for an audience. Isle of Dogs is a very funny film. Some of it comes from the stop motion animation and the framing of shots that just look a little goofy, intentionally so. Characters will feel like they're almost looking directly into the lens, like I mentioned, and other shots will be framed where there's a ridiculous amount of headspace that just looks sort of silly and over the top. Other shots hold for a really long time to humorous effect, and the stop motion animation overall just plays a big part here in terms of how effective the film is comedically. And it's not out of line really with how Wes Anderson usually does visual comedy. A big part of his success with Isle of Dogs stems from the fact that he clearly emphasizes the sillier aspects of the story and plays to their strengths through the animation. The way that these voice actors deliver their lines to a comedic effect does wonders for the film, honestly. And when you combine the unusual delivery of the lines, sort of an offbeat approach like most Wes Anderson movies, with voices that many know and love, with excellent writing and of course hilariously silly visuals like I mentioned, the end result is a hilarious film. I think if you're a dog lover, you'll enjoy this movie even more, not surprisingly, because there's lots of conversations the dogs have with each other where they discuss the importance of being well behaved, how their names were created, their favorite foods, and just the overall importance of being loyal to their owner. These moments allow us to connect with the dogs in ways that's unusual, because considering they talk and discuss the well-known aspects of dog behavior, it sort of plays to the strengths of why many of us love them so much as companions and pets. It's done to a comedic effect mostly, but I was actually surprised at how invested I was in these dogs and their well-being. It's sort of like that well-established rule that we hate seeing dogs die in movies way more than we hate seeing people die, because dogs are way more innocent and pure, which makes us more invested in their well-being. I found myself very invested in these dogs and their plight to overcome the dog flu and of course trying to find their way back to the mainland to reunite with their owners. I became invested in the pack of dogs because they all had a uniquely depressing story about their life before they were exiled to Trash Island. I liked how the dogs developed over the course of the film and how I learned just enough about them to understand their motivations and approach when it comes to humans. It felt oddly realistic in that way. There's really only one area I can knock here. I mentioned that the film is told in parts. Part 2 sort of dragged a little bit for me and I lost some interest because I felt like the story and the journey itself weren't progressing all that much overall. I'd say there's a slowdown in part 2 that kind of felt like the story was at a bit of a standstill, I'd say. It's not a huge deal overall, it's just sort of that part's not engaging as the others. Finally, I think Isle of Dogs has enough twists and turns narratively to keep viewers satisfied. I already mentioned that the story is funny, but it's also clever enough to keep you engaged in the primary conflict of dog flu and dog exile. There's a lot going on here in this movie, but it all comes to a head in a way that feels conclusive and satisfying, and I loved it for that, honestly. But let's take a look at the pros cons as we wrap up. I thought that overall, Isle of Dogs delivered a witty, fun, and emotional story, excellently silly comedy, developed and engaging characters, and excellent visual comedy through the stop-motion animation. As for the cons, I'd say that part 2 is a little weak overall, but it's not a huge deal as a whole. Overall, I'm going to give Isle of Dogs a 9.5 out of 10, and definitely recommend you check this one out in theaters if you're looking for a hilariously good time. This one's a winner. So did you guys see Isle of Dogs yet? What did you think of it? And if not, let me know why not. And also let me know your favorite Wes Anderson film. For me, honestly, I think it might be Isle of Dogs, but it's a tough choice. It's got a lot of really good ones. But either way, this is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.